Students across the city are politically engaged, volunteering on campaigns and discussing the big issues. We all have views that we want our leaders to hear. We will not sit back as this election progresses, especially when it is one of the most important ways for our voices to be heard.
Okay, we would like to extend a warm and gracious welcome to everyone. On behalf of Walter Payton High School, we welcome tonight's mayoral candidates, all distinguished guests and honorees accepted through the Raise Your Hand Coalition. The school in which you are attending tonight's forum represents one of the city's and nation's best in leadership and education. Walter Payton College Prep High School can be viewed as a metaphor for the city, for the city's need of peak performance for all students and all schools. We are a school that has demonstrated how diversity and achievement can go hand in hand. This is accomplished through the major efforts of multiple stakeholders. At Payton, we nurture leaders is our motto. Tonight, it is my distinct pleasure to present to you one of our leaders. When I interviewed Jackson to ask her about some of the things that I could mention about her tonight, she mentioned that, number one, she absolutely loves Payton. Number two, she is passionate about politics. She's an aspiring Senate page applicant, and she is a member of the Politically Connected Club at Payton. It is my pleasure to present to you Jackson Beard.
Good evening. My name is Jackson Beard, and I'm a sophomore here at Walter Payton College Prep. It is my pleasure to address you this evening and to welcome you to my school. Anyone who is a part of this community knows that there is one characteristic of Payton that cannot be overlooked: our political curiosity. This is the school where we would rather talk politics than talk reality TV, where a dozen students travel to Iowa to volunteer in the presidential primaries. This is a school where I was able to plan a record-setting Get Out the Vote campaign event with the help of my classmates and faculty. But we are not politically engaged because we know everything about the political process. We do this because we want to know more. We want to know what candidates believe and what their goals are for the future. To those who might feel that Payton stands alone in their interest in politics, please reconsider that notion. Students across the city are politically engaged, volunteering on campaigns and discussing the big issues. We all have views that we want our leaders to hear. We will not sit back as this election progresses, especially when it is one of the most important ways for our voices to be heard. We, as future leaders, challenge the leaders of the present to create an environment in which we can succeed. As every CPS student knows, education is a key element of that environment. To the candidates here tonight, I ask two questions. What are your plans for us? And how will your administration address the concerns of CPS students? Thank you.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Ed Mullen. I am the chair of Northside Democracy for America. Northside DFA is a group of committed activists dedicated to electing socially progressive, fiscally responsible, and ethically committed Democrats to public office. We're an open organization, and we invite any of you who are not members to come to one of our meetings where we hear from and endorse political candidates of a wide variety. You can find out more about Northside DFA by going to democracyforamerica.com or asking anyone who has a Northside DFA button here tonight. It's my privilege tonight to introduce our mayoral candidates. Based on the number of nominating petitions filed and recent polling results, we invited the 6 leading candidates to tonight's forum. 5 of those candidates accepted our invitation, but unfortunately, Congressman Danny Davis was called back to Washington to vote on tax issues over the last few days, so he's not able to be with us this evening. But we would like to welcome now tonight's candidates. and they can come on stage now. From left to right, please welcome the former president of Chicago Public Schools and former chairman of the Chicago City Colleges, Jerry Chico. Next, please welcome former state senator and the current Chicago City Clerk, Miguel de Valle. Next, please welcome former United States Senator and Ambassador to New Zealand, Carol Moseley Braun. And finally, please welcome State Senator James Meeks. Thank you all very much for joining us this evening, and we look forward to a spirited discussion. Now please welcome Amy Smolensky from Raise Your Hand, one of our co-sponsors this evening, to introduce our moderator.
Thank you. My name is Amy Smolensky. On behalf of all of tonight's sponsors, we would like to thank the staff and students of Walter Payton and the College Prep and the Friends of Walter Payton organization for their generous support hosting tonight's forum. I am so proud to be here tonight representing the Raise Your Hand Coalition, and I'm equally pleased to know that many in tonight's audience are among our members. Raise Your Hand is a parent-driven coalition that has mobilized 20,000 dedicated citizens to stand up for our children, to bring attention to education issues, and to demand a more transparent and accountable school system. Together, we have held rallies where we said no to 37 kids in a classroom and laid the pressure on Give Back TIF. We have written nearly 200,000 letters to our representatives and have helped to avert hundreds of millions of dollars in cuts to education funding. We know the issues and we know that our collective voice is being heard, but we also know that there is much more to do. Tonight, we continue to put the spotlight on Chicago's education system by asking some of our leading mayoral candidates to tell us their plans to permanently fix public education in Chicago. We look forward to hearing their remarks, and we encourage anyone who values education to become a member of the Raise Your Hand Coalition. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to introduce tonight's moderator, Andy Shaw. Many may know Andy as an iconic journalist who spent 37 years covering local, state, and national politics, business, and education. Today, Andy leads the Better Government Association in its organization's effort to advance transparency, accountability, efficiency, and honesty in state and local government. We are thrilled to have Andy here to lead tonight's discussion. Please welcome Andy Shaw.
Well, for those of you who watched me wield a microphone for all those years at ABC, I want to tell you that it's a privilege to be wielding it tonight on behalf of an equally stellar, albeit not quite as wealthy, group of initials known as BGA. We believe simply that better government is a right and a responsibility, and if we all do our jobs diligently and smartly and aggressively, it can actually become a reality. It is simply unacceptable for public officials in education or anywhere else to treat our hard-earned tax dollars like it's their money. That's our mission, and that's my second calling. This is an exciting time for Chicago. This is our first truly open and contested mayoral race in more than 2 decades. The city is at a crossroads in a number of key areas, among them crime, finance, and tonight's topic, education. It's essential for people who want to lead this city to come out to neighborhoods and stand or sit side by side and face audiences of voters like you in unscripted formats to talk about key issues. If you want to lead our city, come to the community and deal with people. Simple as that. The format tonight is quite simple. Each of the candidates will get 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then we'll begin a round of questions. I'll ask three specific questions. All the candidates will get a minute to answer. Then we'll take some questions from students. Each student will ask one of the candidates a question. And then we'll go back to a few more questions from me, and then we'll have closing statements. I've been given the latitude to follow up if need be, to suggest that an answer was either unresponsive or incomplete, and to make sure that we actually turn this into a vibrant discussion and not just a series of speeches. Let me say also that we're being broadcast tonight, I should say that we're being videotaped tonight by CAN TV, the public access operation, and the scheduled airing date as presently constituted is December 26th at 5 p.m. on Channel 19, I think that's where it plays on Comcast. So without further ado, we'll start with the opening statements, and they go from the far end of the table to the center. One final bit of housekeeping. We do have timekeepers in the front row, and they will give us a signal as to when we're almost out of the time allotted, and I ask you to stay as close as possible to the allotment. And with that, let's get going first with Gary Chico.
Thank you very much, Andy. And Thank you very much, Andy, and thank you to the sponsors of this forum on this hugely important topic. Let me start by saying that I am a proud graduate of the Chicago Public Schools, Kelly High School, as were my parents and all of my children. Public schools are in my blood. When in 1995, Mayor Daley asked me to assume the lead of the Chicago Public Schools, the legislature began a piece of legislation that said Chicago Public Schools are in crisis, and they were. Our budget deficit was expected to be $1.3 billion. Our buildings were crumbling. Our children weren't learning. And there was just disaster all around. I was proud to be able to lead an effort which balanced that budget right away and had 6 successive years of balanced budgets, brought labor peace with our teachers union, built 65 new school buildings, including the one we're sitting in here this evening, 400 renovations, and campus parks. I was also very pleased that we saw 6 years of test score improvements. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're back in that situation. I've been gone 10 years and our schools are adrift again. We need to take action. I've come up with a plan that addresses one goal: to give every child a quality education in every part of our city. My plan calls for simple things. Great teachers. I'll lead the way by recruiting myself to bring those teachers into our schools, as I've done before. 2, parents. We need thoughtful parent engagement. I've called for a parent resource center in every school so that parents can have access to people who know what's going on. I've called for a parent advocate general at the very top of the system, and I've called for technology in a way we haven't seen before, and a series of preschools that, with the likes of which has not been seen in this city. This is not the time for small actions, it's the time for big thinking. I will provide that, and I will make sure that every child in our city has a quality education. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary Chico. And your applause gives me a reason to tell you the one thing I forgot in the opening remarks, and that is enjoy the debate, show your enthusiasm. All we ask is that you try to be courteous and not hoot and howl against somebody, but support your candidate. And with that, Miguel Del Valle will give his opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. I want to thank all the sponsors. I started my education just a few blocks from here, on Schiller and North Park. I entered the 1st grade, and I was held back that year. I was held back because I didn't speak English. And at the end of the year, the teachers invited my mother to come to school, and she took me with her and a translator. And my mother was told that I was being held back because I didn't speak English. A couple years later, at Wicker Park School, I had this wonderful teacher, Miss Sebsky, who just inspired me, who motivated me, who saw the potential in me and worked with me. And as a result of that wonderful teacher's work, I was double promoted. And so I made up the year that I lost. When I was elected the first Latino state senator in the history of the state of Illinois, the very first speech that I gave on the floor of the Illinois Senate was a speech to fight off efforts by a Republican senator to take away the funds for bilingual transitional education. After that, years after that, I became the chairman of the Senate Education Committee, where I sponsored legislation to increase the compulsory attendance age, to raise it from 16 to 17, so that our schools could hang on longer to our high school students, because too many students were being pushed out of school. I then, after leaving the Illinois Senate, was appointed chairman of the P20 Council by the governor. I'm currently the chairman of the council, and we're coordinating all levels of public education in the state of Illinois and working to create a seamless system of of public education to make sure that kids graduate college and career ready. We're doing very well, and progress has been made.
Thanks, Miguel del Valle. Carol Moser Braun, you have the next opening statement.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank the sponsors of this event. I'd like to thank my hostess, Jackie, for seeing after me, and thank you all for being here this evening and giving us an opportunity to have this discussion. What makes Walter Payton different? What makes it stand out? Is it because the men are handsome, the women are accomplished, and the students are all above average? Okay, that's true also. But it is also a function of the fact that Walter Payton has the resources, not just money, but committed teachers, competent administrators, engaged parents, in an environment suitable for learning. It has music, it has art, it has physical education. It is a world-class school because of all those resources that are brought to bear in this place. I want every school in Chicago to be as brilliant as Walter Payton. I want to make sure that every neighborhood has a quality school, has opportunities for quality public education. And I think it starts with reforming the system that we have in place now. To begin with, we ought to have a superintendent, an educator, who understands how children learn and understands education, not just a CEO or bean counter. I believe that we also need to simplify the system. Right now, we've got layers of bureaucracy representing every education experiment in the last 2 decades. And what it's done is confused everything and left us with a system that nobody can understand. I believe the bureaucracy should serve the students and not the other way around. I'd like also to see us to get more federal money in here. Now, when you consider that the federal government contributes less than 8% of the cost of elementary and secondary education in the state of Illinois, it is a shameful thing. I'm going to be quickly. I went to the Chicago Public Schools. I was able to walk to my school in my neighborhood, get a quality education. I was able to graduate law school at the University of Chicago and get postgraduate education at Harvard because of what started here in the city of Chicago. I want that for every child in every neighborhood in this city.
And our last opening statement is Senator Meeks.
I am State Senator James Meeks. I want to thank you all for inviting us here tonight. I am the chairman of the Senate Education Committee, and for the last 8 years, I believe that I have been the leading advocate in the state of Illinois for equitable and fair school funding. I've done everything that I know to do to bring attention to this problem. We led marches in Winnetka. We left the Walter Payton School, and we protested better teachers, or better quality teachers in all schools. I have a school bill, legislation that kids could go anywhere that they want to go because we have too many kids who are trapped in underfunded and underperforming schools. I passed a bill this year out of the Illinois Senate, a School Choice Act, so that kids could go anywhere that they wanted to go because we were not fixing our neighborhood schools. I sat at the table when we negotiated Race to the Top. We lost Race to the Top only because we wouldn't go far enough in making sure that teachers were properly evaluated. We will be back at the table, and I hope that this time we don't let the $400 million that we let go to the federal government, that we don't let it go. We need it here in Illinois, and we need those evaluations. Finally, I say, and it's very simple, don't judge us by what we say we're going to do. Judge us by what we've been doing.
Okay, so on the basis of that statement, Senator Meeks, you happen to be first on the list for the first question. Let me go right back to where you've lived all these years, I mean legislatively, and ask you. The governor proposed last year and is again asking for an income tax increase. He wants it earmarked for education. It's about $1 billion. If you become the mayor of Chicago and the legislature has another month and a half to try to resolve this, what do you do on behalf of that bill, or what don't you do? Do you fight for it, or is it bad policy?
I think that we need to make sure that we demonstrate to the General Assembly how the $1 billion is going to be spent. The people of the state of Illinois don't mind giving money to schools. They just want to know how it's going to be spent. And they just want to make sure that it's going to improve the quality of education. And so we have an obligation to make sure that you know how your tax dollars are going to be spent before we ask you for them. And we have an obligation to make sure that your tax dollars will improve the quality of education. And if we cannot demonstrate that your tax dollars will improve the quality of education, we shouldn't ask you for them.
Next on that question, and this is a random system of answers set up by computer, so I'm just going to follow the instructions in front of me. Gary Chico, you're next on that one. Up or down on a tax increase for education?
I'd like to see a piece of tax legislation that not only gives more money to education, but provides relief to property tax payers. Property tax payers in this city are hurting. If you walk around this city and you visit with people, they are hurting. The idea of more money for education thrills me. But I will say this, absolutely it should be put to the right reasons, to the right purposes. More preschool. We need preschools, a network of preschools, so that we start our children on the right path at the age of 3. I'd like to see the money go to that. I'd also like to see the money used for a longer school day and a longer school year, so that more time spent learning will mean a better education outcome for our students.
Next is Carol Mosley-Braun, the tax increase question.
You know, the last time we had a big tax increase in Illinois, it was floated as a tax to pay for education. Remember the lottery? That was supposed to be education money. They lied to us then, and frankly, I'm not so sure that we're going to get the truth this time. I don't support a tax increase. I think we need to live within our means. In case anybody didn't notice, and I know this is against my governor, but we're still in the middle of a recession, and it seems to me that a recession is the absolute wrong time to suggest that you're going to raise people's taxes in the state of Illinois. I think we can do what we have to do within our current resources, within our means, work smarter, work more efficiently, and not continue to go back to the taxpayer without showing that we have actually given them value for their tax investment.
Miguel Del Valle, the tax question, a body that you spent a lot of years into.
Well, I supported and was the co-sponsor of a bill to increase the state income tax and to provide property tax relief. It also had a provision in it to expand the sales tax base in order to generate additional dollars. Now, we need additional revenue in the state of Illinois. We're facing a $13 billion deficit. Anyone who says that they are opposed to an income tax increase is not coming face to face with the reality in Illinois. The Education Funding Advisory Board has just recommended that the foundation level, the per pupil foundation level, should go from $6,100 to $8,300. Where is that money going to come from? We've never really funded the foundation level in the state of Illinois at the level recommended by the Education Funding Advisory Board. The only way we can do that is with an income tax increase. Chicago needs those dollars.
Okay. Let me go back, and question 2 builds off of something that Carol Mosley-Braun mentioned in her opening statement. The first major decision that the new mayor will have to make is on the choice of a new school superintendent. We have an acting one who will be in place until there's a new mayor. Terry Mazzani, I'm sure, will do an adequate job of holding down the fort. But what are you going to look for in a new superintendent? And I guess most importantly, Would you be willing to follow the mayor's model where he made Paul Vallis school superintendent without education experience but lots of administrative experience? Or is it more that we need an educator and a person who's an administrator? And Senator Meeks, you're first on this one too.
Okay. I think that that model has not served us well, and I would be looking for a person with education experience to lead our school system.
Simple as that. They'd have to have some education degree.
They would have to have education degree because we have lost the trust of the rank and file school teacher because the individual who is mandating to them what they should do does not understand education himself. And so we need an educator.
Gary Chico, you were the board president when the system was led and by some accounts improved under a non-educator with a lot of other skills. So
Yes.
This time around, if you're the mayor, do you follow a Vallis model or do you change the paradigm?
Well, first of all, the model comes from state legislation. It doesn't come from anything that the mayor does or doesn't do. Whether you choose to amend the law, you can look at that. However, I think that it's not the model that's broken, it's been the execution of the model that's broken. There was a fine woman by the name of Barbara Eason Watkins, who was our chief education officer, and frankly, she was never used, and that was wrong. I think the model works where you have a chief executive. You're talking about a $6 billion plus system. It's an enormous enterprise to run, side by side with an excellent educator to be our pedagogical leader. And I would keep that system, but I would make clear that we have an inspiring team. We want people to be excited about public education, and that's where I would go with the model.
Miguel Del Valle, you're next in this line.
Well, what is in state legislation, what is in the statute is a title. It doesn't tell you exactly the type of person that you want leading the schools. We want an educational leader. We want someone who can inspire, who can motivate, someone who understands how important it is to ensure that we don't have a two-track system, that we don't have a parallel system in the city of Chicago with magnet schools and selective enrollment schools and charter schools on one track and the neighborhood schools on another. We need one track, not two tracks. And so it's extremely important that we have an educational leader and that then we have an individual who can deal with the finances, a chief financial officer who can then take care of the business and working in conjunction with a superintendent.
Let me see if I get, yes or no, the CEO should have an education background?
Education background, absolutely.
Okay, Carol Mosley Braun, you alluded to it in your opening statement. Expand a little bit here.
I think the point is that we're not talking CEO as much as we are superintendent. And the model is one that is not dictated in state statute. In fact, the title, you could name whatever person you wanted to that position. What we're saying is that it's time to name an educator. Because when we had educators running the system, you didn't have convoluted bureaucracy and children weren't treated like widgets. And so I believe that we have an opportunity now to get back to the model of having a superintendent. That person will hire and will engage a team of professionals to deal with procurement and purchasing and all those other things. But the leadership in terms of education should come from the top. And that leadership, again, should get back to a more simplified bureaucracy that focuses in on the core elements of education, including art, music, physical education, and early childhood education.
There is a pitched national battle between teachers' unions and school reformers over who is responsible for failure in the schools and what, if anything, needs to be changed in union contracts to either make it easier to get rid of certain teachers, to hire other teachers, to reward certain teachers. Let me ask you, the mayor doesn't actually negotiate the contract, but he or she historically sets the parameters and basically signs off on agreements once they've been tentatively settled on between school boards and teachers' unions. What would you like to see changed in the union contract, if anything, that would move in the direction of a better functioning school system and better outcomes for students? And first on this one is Miguel Del Valle.
Well, there's certainly a lot of discussion around how we get rid of incompetent teachers. We all know how important it is to have teachers who can do what the teacher did for me in the 3rd grade. And we have lots of wonderful teachers. And teachers, when you look at what's happening nationally, are taking a real hit. They're being criticized and they're being blamed for everything under the sun. The fact is that we have a lot of great teachers out there, but a great teacher will tell you that they also want to make sure that incompetent teachers are weeded out of the system. And so we need the cooperation of the union to establish an evaluation system that takes into account student performance, and that we use our data systems to track that performance and be able to determine when it is that a teacher is not performing well, and do whatever is necessary to provide the professional development opportunities. And if that doesn't work, then we have to fire that teacher.
Senator Meeks?
If teachers are concerned, as Senator DeValier said, with incompetent teachers, I called for today the Chicago Teachers Union to put forth a proposal for identifying incompetent teachers and streamlining the dismissal process. They should be given the opportunity first. If they cannot and they do not within 1 year, then I will ask the General Assembly to come up with a process to identify and get rid of incompetent teachers. Incompetent teachers cannot stay in our classrooms if they're not doing the job.
And Carol Mosley Braun, you get the last answer on this round.
Well, I think we have to stop scapegoating teachers to begin with. It's not, the problems of this school system go far beyond the occasional bad teacher. That's not to say there aren't bad teachers. There are, just like there are bad everythings. But the fact of the matter is that the bulk of the teachers who are in the system are trying hard, are committed, are there not for the money. Nobody goes into teaching in elementary and secondary education because they're looking for money. They go in it because they want to educate. So I think the first thing would be to have a better collaboration. You mentioned the word pitched battle. That's exactly the problem, because we have a battle between the school board and the school system and the administrators and the teachers union, and it shouldn't be that way. There should be more collaboration. We should work with the teachers union to deal with disciplinary issues and bad teachers and problem schools, but we have to work together to collaborate around solutions to these thorny problems if we're going to solve them.
And I misspoke. Gary gets the last word on this round.
Thank you very much. I don't battle with teachers. In fact, I've led the way on contract negotiations 2 times successfully to conclude 4-year labor agreements with the Chicago Teachers Union. And there was an exemplary individual at the top of that union by the name of Tom Reese. He's since deceased. Most teachers are good. We have to remember that. Most teachers are good and do a very, very good job. This is a tough job and many times a thankless job. My wife, who I'm very proud of, is a teacher. My mother-in-law is a teacher. My son's a teacher. And my daughter's a teacher. These are people I'm proud of. They go to work every day trying to do the right thing by children. But let's face it, this is a dynamic problem. It's not just about what you have in a union contract or even a state statute, because we can recruit the way we want, which I propose to do in a whole different way. We should train our teachers. We should have performance evaluations and pay that goes along with that. And finally, when it's proven that a teacher cannot teach, they should be dismissed.
Okay, this is going along well. We're actually ahead of schedule, which is terrific. This is the round where 4 students from Peyton are going to ask questions of the 4 of you. And I don't know who is doing what, but you guys know. So whoever's first, the first question goes to Carol Mosley Braun. And I think it would be nice if you identified yourself by name and what year you are.
Hello, my name is Jackie Powers, and I am a junior at Walter Payton College Prep. My question is for Ambassador Mosley Braun. Ambassador, what is your opinion on discretionary admission to selective enrollment in magnet schools? I
believe that, well, again, the magnet schools are part of the tracking that we have in the system right now. We're not going to get rid of them because it's what's in place, and it has given us a quality system for young people such as yourself in this school. But quite frankly, for me, the issue is not admissions, discretionary or otherwise, in magnet schools. The question for me is, how do we make the neighborhood schools sufficiently good that people will want to go there? Right now, you have the discretionary admissions because it's a commodity, it's treated like a commodity that people have to compete over. And once people have done the tests and the like, then the principal is given a certain latitude in admitting other students. I don't know that you want to necessarily get rid of that latitude at this point, because I believe teachers and principals ought to have the ability to say, this student may not have tested at this level on the test scores, but they bring this other set of skills or this other set of values to the environment in which our school is going to operate. So no, I wouldn't get rid of it, but at the same time, I want to make sure that all of our schools are sufficiently good that we don't have to have this pitch competition over admissions.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Okay, the next student question is for Gary Chico.
Hello, my name is Anna Skolnick, and I'm a junior at Walter Payton. My question is for Senator Meeks.
I'm sorry. Oh, I guess your question is for Senator Meeks.
Senator Meeks.
That's okay.
And
Look, that's fine.
I will take it.
I think that's just fine. Go for it.
If it's easy, I'll take it. If it's hard, it's for Gary.
Okay. Our generation is keenly aware of the impact large groups have on the environment. What are your plans as mayor to make CPS environmentally conscious?
I think that the Chicago public school system should study all of the green initiatives. And I think that we should make sure that we have green initiatives in our schools, because the only way we can make sure that all of our students, and I know I should have let Gary have this question. I've been so busy fighting on funding, but the only way that we do it is that we have to study it, and we have to study it across the board.
Thank you.
You were just nice.
And I'm not gonna blow this next one, so you're gonna tell me who you're questioning, because you know, and I may be wrong. So go for it.
Hello, my name is Leah Castleberry, and I'm a senior here at Payton. My question is for City Clerk Del Valle. Mr. Del Valle, we are hearing more and more stories about the rising incidents of bullying and the sometimes tragic outcomes that it leads to. Do you support any measures to deal with this important issue?
Well, I think that there ought to be policies in place that every school in the district follow, and that those policies then get implemented by the leader of every school, the principal, working along with the teachers. The policy should be part of the professional development of teachers, and then there's a matter of enforcement and reporting. I was a victim of bullying when I was in grammar school. I graduated from Talcott School, and I had to try and leave the classroom early so I wouldn't get beat up walking out of the school. Bullying has been around for a long, long time, and I think that it's important for the principals and the teachers to ensure that whenever there's an incident of bullying, that it gets dealt with appropriately and quickly.
Thank you.
And I think I'm safe in saying that the last question is for Gary Chico, because if you ask Danny Davis a question, you won't get an answer.
Or Ron.
Hello,
Well, Ron,
Ka-ching.
Hello, my name is Jordan Holman, and I'm a junior here. So my question is for candidate Chico. The performance gap in Chicago schools is significant, with many schools either excelling or lagging dangerously behind. Ideally, how would you advance the institutions that are, in fact, being left behind?
Thank you very much for your question, Jordan. It's an excellent question. It really goes to the heart of the issue about what we should be about as a city in improving our schools overall. Every neighborhood deserves a high-performing school. Every neighborhood. How do we do that? We do it with a lot of the factors that I've talked about in the plan that I've proposed. We need excellent leaders, first principals, in every one of our schools. I've seen nothing more impactful in my career than an excellent principal leading the charge to make a school better. That excellent principal recruits great teachers. After we recruit great teachers, they follow a set of standards and curricula which are very, very sound. We have parental engagement at every one of our schools, and then we have accountability. because we can't just say we're going to do these things and not hold every one of these parties accountable. And obviously, resources are important as well. But I'm here to tell you that I've seen hundreds of schools improve. We just have to move them along more quickly.
Thank you.
And let's thank all of you students from Walter Payton. Great questions. As all of you know, Chicago has one of, if not the shortest school day and shortest year in America. And I know, as someone who covered education along with everything else for a lot of years, there's been talk over and over about a longer school day and a longer school year, but it always comes down to a very simple issue. Teachers say, you want us here longer, you've got to pay us more, and there wasn't the money for it. So the Board of Education always backed off at the last minute in really implementing a serious change in that policy. So let me ask you what you would push as mayor to keep kids in school longer so that perhaps they'd learn more. And we begin here with Carol Mosley Braun.
You know, I know it's the new hotness to talk about longer school days and longer school years, but the fact of the matter is half these schools aren't educating anyway. So it's like, why give them more time to miseducate our children? I mean, yes, it is a good thing to talk about, but I think we need to focus in on how do we raise the performance in all of the schools, in the neighborhood schools, not just the wonderful, this is a magnificent edifice, Walter Payton. This is a wonderful school. If every school in Chicago was like this, we could talk about, you know, what else we'd like to do. Would I like to extend it? Of course. Of course. The school year right now is predicated on this calendar for bringing in the crops. Seriously, that's actually where the school year comes from. It had to do with agriculture. And that obviously is a model that doesn't work anymore. So should we raise lengthen the day and lengthen the time in school? Yes, we should. But I think we should not use that thinking that's a panacea for raising performance and improving test scores.
Miguel Del Valle, school day, school year length.
Well, I believe that one of the ways to lengthen the school day is to establish a community learning center, as we did in my legislative district at every school, where the entire family is learning, where parents are taking GED classes, ESL classes, engage in cultural activities, where there's an opportunity to value the culture of the family, and where teachers and parents and students come together, where students get homework assistance and are able to engage in recreational activities. Time to play. Kids need time to play. It's part of the learning process. And we took away recess and we took away lunch hour. Now kids have 20 minutes to eat. I think that's inhumane. That has to change. That's how you deal with the school day. And so, yes, the teachers union has to cooperate, but just adding time to the day without talking about what needs to happen during that time into the evening and on Saturdays is not going to translate into increased student performance.
Gary Chico, something you wrestled with for a long time.
Not only wrestled with, but actually did it. We lengthened the school day in effect by creating after-school programs in hundreds of schools, kept our school buildings open till 5:30. I think Miguel has an excellent point. This is not just about stretching the day to provide only academics. We also provided some playtime and some recreation time for the students, and importantly, gave them, in many cases, the third meal of the day. Remember, a lot of our children go hungry, and so providing them food is important. We also extended the school year through the nation's largest summer school program. It doesn't really matter the form in which you do it, as long as you do it. And I can tell you this, I've proposed lengthening the school day from 6 to 8 hours and the school year from 176 days to 200 days. The reason for that is all of the research shows that more time spent teaching means more time children learn. And I think that's a very fundamental way to go about things. Now, how do we pay for it? You have to cut the central bureaucracy by a third. That's a proposal I've made.
Senator Meeks, last in this round.
Yes, until we can extend the school day, I'll tell you what we can do right now. We can go to full-day kindergarten. We can make sure that the first, second, and third grade classes in all of our schools, instead of having 45 minutes for math and 45 minutes for reading, that they have 90 minutes for math and 90 minutes for reading. Our kids are not reading at the 3rd grade by the 3rd grade level. And the statistics tell us that a state can determine how many prisons to build based on how many students are reading at grade level by the 3rd grade. So let's start concentrating on what we can do now with the dollars that we have rather than philosophizing about what we would do if we had more dollars. We don't have them. Let's concentrate on making sure that every 3rd grader can read by the 3rd grade level.
The sponsoring groups gave me a list of their top priorities, and one of the questions that I was told I absolutely had to ask, and so here we go, is a pretty basic one, and that is options for parents and children. What do you do about charter schools, magnet schools, vouchers, which is another way of describing what Senator Meeks calls opportunity scholarships? The point is, how do we expand options, or do we expand options? Maybe it's better simply to improve neighborhood schools. Give us your thoughts, beginning with Gary Chico.
I look forward to the day when there's a menu of options in every community for a parent to make a choice about where they would like to send their children. And the community school will be at the center of that list of options. However, I have seen from my experience that a lot of parents, many in this room, want to have different kinds of programs. Some of them want college prep, some of them want the arts, some of them want to focus on other things. Charter schools, I was proud to usher in charter schools in 1996, started out with 15, and today we have 91 charter school sites educating 36,000 students. Please, you have to allow for everything because people need choices. I also believe that our high school options, like Walter Payton, we could probably use another round of these schools, Andy, in 6 different parts of the city. And I'd like to see that happen.
Carol Mosley Braun, you're next in this round.
I am committed to quality, accessible, public education. There is a continuum that starts with the public schools and goes all the way to the vouchers that let an individual take a chit for some money and go and find an education wherever they choose to buy it. I think that our first obligation as a community, as citizens, is to make certain that our public schools are of sufficient quality that parents will choose to send their children to those schools. Now, obviously, if a parent wants to choose to send their child to a private school or to a quasi-private school, such as the charter schools, or to a specialty super-duper school, that's fine. But the point is that unless and until we are comfortable as a community that we have done everything we can to provide quality public education for every child in every neighborhood, then the rest of the conversation, I think, is a diversion.
Senator Meeks.
I think that we ought to give families a choice. I think that the most precious resource you have is your child. We're sitting here now talking about a broke system, a system of education that is not working, a system of education that's going to take us at least 7 to 10 years to fix. Do you have 7 to 10 years to wait on us to fix the system, or will your child be in 3rd grade only one time? So while we're working on this system, we have magnet schools, we have charter schools. Why not give families a choice? It's just like we have Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, we have McDonald's, we have Wendy's. The United States Post Office did not get better until you had UPS and FedEx. Then all of a sudden, the United States Post Office stepped up its game. So what's wrong with letting kids have a voucher? I bet you that would make the public school system better.
And the last word in this round is Miguel Del Valle.
Well, I have a lot of respect for Senator Meeks. We worked on a lot of education issues together, but my position continues to be that the day that we go to vouchers in the city of Chicago for our public school students, is the day that we throw our arms up in the air and say, we're giving up on our Chicago public schools. I will not give up on our neighborhood schools. We have a lot of good things going on. We want to replicate those things. We want academic options at the neighborhood level so parents don't have to send their kids on a bus to a school far away or have to drive them when there's a school on the block where they live. That needs to be our goal. But we don't do that. We don't do that by sacrificing the quality that we have in our selective enrollment schools and our magnet schools. Those are academic options that should be there for families. We don't want to reduce the number of options. We want to increase them.
Thank you. You know, we've talked about the extraordinary capacity and beauty and options here at Walter Payton, one of a number of schools where virtually everyone would like to send their kids. But that raises a question of whether the money in capital budgets ought to build Walter Paytons around the school, around the city, or whether we need to direct more of it to repairing the crumbling schools in neighborhoods where they're not going to get a new one for a while. So I guess the feeling among a lot of the parents that are sponsoring the event tonight is that we put too much money into new schools and not enough into rehabbing existing schools. So let me ask you what, if anything, you change from the current model when it comes to the use of capital dollars on improving the bricks and mortar. And the first one in this category is Gary Chico.
In my experience, I spent more money rehabbing schools than building new ones. I rehabbed 400 schools throughout our city. That included roofs, windows, masonry, interior bathroom, and lab renovations. The majority of the money did go to renovation, and I think it was well spent. I could tell you about the Brentano School on the Kennedy Expressway that I visited before we rehabbed it, and the teachers and the students complained that they couldn't hear the teacher talking because of the expressway traffic. I also went to another school where the kids had to wear coats because the old windows were never treated, and the wind kept coming in, making people cold. So I was happy to see those 400 renovations take place because every child throughout every part of our city needs to have the best quality building we can possibly provide. But I don't think that's exclusive. We should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We can build this kind of school and the 64 others that we've built throughout the city during my tenure as CPS board president.
Miguel Del Valle, the distribution of capital dollars, new versus rehab.
Priorities have to be set. I joined the parents at Whittier when they took over the field house because they want a library for their children in Pilsen. Now, as a result of that struggle, we learned that there are over 100 schools without libraries in the city of Chicago in this day and age. Now, in addition to that, I heard from parents a couple of weeks ago where their kids are being made to go year-round at a school where the heat is unbearable during the summer months. They need air conditioning. As a matter of fact, they pointed out that the principal had an air conditioner and the classrooms didn't have an air conditioner. So when the principal learned that they knew that, she took the air conditioner out. We need to prioritize the needs of those schools. We need to get more capital dollars from the federal government and from state to be able to match the dollars that we have locally.
Carol Mosley Braun.
Thank you. The whole point of the Crumbling Schools initiative that I passed as senator was to bring federal money in, increase the amount of federal contributions to, if you will, brick and mortar projects for local schools. Senator Del Valle is exactly right. It's a matter of priorities. There are some communities that need new schools, but in most communities, retrofitting, rehabilitation is what would be most appropriate and required. And let me suggest that this is an opportunity for us to do some green building. We can use this as an opportunity to put in more efficient energy systems, to retrofit the windows in ways that will modernize the buildings and help us reduce our energy dependence. We can find ways to actually save money based on our investment in providing our children with environments that are suitable for learning, because that, after all, is what this is supposed to be about, creating an environment in which young people can learn, in which they can access the latest of technologies and the like, even in some buildings that might be 100 years old.
Senator Meeks, last in this round.
162 high schools in the city of Chicago, 162, only 16 are at grade level. I would not want the brilliant students at Walter Payton to not have a Walter Payton. I wouldn't want the people at Northside Prep to not have a Northside Prep. But I do want us, as citizens of the city of Chicago, to make sure that we are figuring out a way to fully resource all of the other schools in the city of Chicago, because the goal is that every school, we shouldn't be content to have 16 schools out of 162 schools doing well. Our goal should be every school in the city of Chicago doing well.
Let's ask about something that's become well known in recent years, although a decade ago I never would have used the word in a news story because they would have laughed me out of the newsroom, the word TIF, which all of a sudden used to mean a fight, right? Now we know it's tax increment financing. We know it's supposed to be an economic development tool. We also know through some diligent reporting over the years that it does drain a lot of money from government entities because it sets it aside for future use. This isn't an evening for a TIF 101, but everybody up here understands that. So my question is, knowing full well that hundreds of millions of dollars over the years have been held in abeyance and not given to the school district, what do you change in TIF policy as mayor to try to direct more of that money toward education, if anything? And I go first here to Miguel del Valle.
Well, we have about 160 TIFs. And of course, the original purpose of TIFs was to help economic or boost economic development in blighted areas. Well, we know that downtown is not blighted, and yet it was TIFed. And so obviously, TIFs have gone in a different direction than what was intended. Now, in this last budget that was approved by the City Council, there were dollars set aside from TIFs for the Chicago Board of Education, for the first time in a long time, and as well as dollars for the municipal government. We need to continue to use TIF dollars to fund the Chicago Public Schools and to help the capital program of the Chicago Public Schools. There are a number of schools that have been built in the last few years utilizing some TIF dollars. And so obviously, it's not enough to build all the schools and to rehab all the schools that need to be done, but TIF dollars are diverted away from schools, and we need to put more of those dollars back into the schools.
Gary Chico?
I should point out that the #1 recipient of TIF dollars is the Chicago Public Schools. Well over $1 billion has been proposed for Chicago public school construction. And the reason that that's important is where are we going to get these monies? We were talking a little bit before we started this evening. Federal government's not providing the money. The state's not going to provide you any money. Where are we going to get the money to build or rehab any school if we don't keep our options on the table? So I think that this is something that we have to study carefully. There are problems with the TIF program, there's no doubt about it. And I think it was a wise use of money this past year to free up some of those TIF dollars to help the operating budget of the Chicago Public Schools. But I certainly would not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because these TIF dollars have provided some of the best facilities throughout the city, throughout the entire city that we have today.
Senator Meeks?
But the main problem is we don't have transparency. We need full transparency in the TIF program. The TIF program is not intended to be the mayor's private piggy bank, or it is not intended to be the city council's private piggy bank. So we need to put all TIF dollars online. We need to spell out where they're going. We need to spell out where new TIF dollars are needed, and we need to use them in areas that need TIF. I don't understand how we've let this happen for so long that the TIF dollars, nobody knows about it. Aldermen don't know what's in other aldermen's TIF. They don't even know what's in their own TIFs. So it's time for the TIF dollars to be transparent, and it's time for all of the secrecy to quit. It's our money. We're the people of the city of Chicago, and we should know where all all TIF dollars are.
loudest word in this round is yours, Carol Mosley Brown.
Well, to begin with, I agree that we ought to have a moratorium on the program. It is so corrupted and so non-transparent. It's essentially an off-budget, a whole set of off-budget transactions that the citizens don't get a chance to monitor, and as Senator Meeks points out, not even the aldermen know what's going on with those funds. But I would make the first point of observation, however, would be that the TIF money comes from a diversion of tax dollars to the Chicago school system to begin with. So I think maybe as part of the moratorium, we might want to consider not taking money from the school system in order to create this development fund for this fund for development activities.
Let me ask each of you to first give the Chicago public school system a grade. It grades the students. Give it a grade in the traditional way, A through F. And then, after you've given us a letter, tell us what you think the biggest single challenge is to improving performance and outcomes in the public schools. And the first answer in this round is Carol Mosley Braun.
Oh. I'm sorry. I think I'd have to give it maybe a D. I'd give it a D, and it got a D because of places like Walter Payton bringing up the curve. There are schools like, well, and I don't want to name them because I don't want to dump on any school, but there are schools in the city that are, for all intents and purposes, dropout factories, where the dropout rate is higher than the graduation rate, where the teachers are just come there to collect a paycheck, where the administrators walk around and have no clue what paperwork they're filling out. I mean, it just really is bad. So, and not to mention the fact that downtown, the bureaucracy is just layer on layer on layer on layer of people who often don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So I just think that, in 1957 they might have, when the program came out that they were funded for, but I just think that we absolutely have to simplify the system. We have to reform the system. We need to emphasize the commitment and the accountability for neighborhood schools, make the school system accountable. And I think that starts not with bean counters, figuring out just the budget numbers and who's going to get the contracts, because that's really what's driving this system. Make no mistake about it. A lot of what's going on here is contract and procurement driven. So if we're going to make it education driven, I believe that's where we will have the opportunity to improve the grade that the schools are getting. So this is an interim grade of a D.
Senator Meeks,
C-.
a grade, and then what the biggest challenge is.
Since all of us are likely to give the school system a D, we cannot give it a D while at the same time saying that the mayor has done a good job with our schools, because it is a D under his administration. So I just want all of us to understand that. The biggest challenge that's facing us is how to put it back together again, how to get CTU and CPS, as Ambassador Mosley said a few minutes ago, to work together in a collaborative effort, how to be at the table and not at each other's throat. Our children are what's at stake, and that's the biggest problem, how to put it back together again, and I think that we can do it with a myriad of solutions, and choice is one of them.
Miguel Del Valle, a grade and the biggest challenge.
Well, I know that during political campaigns, some folks feel that the only way that you could get the voters' attention is by tearing down your opponents and tearing down the system or the body, the legislative body that you're running for. But I cannot give an overall grade. I will separate our grammar schools, our elementary schools from our high schools. I think there's some wonderful things happening in our elementary schools. I visit lots of schools where things are going beautifully, where kids are progressing, where they're making annual, yearly progress on their No Child Left Behind. And so I think we're in the C category, with some schools a B and some even an A. At the high school level, it's a different story. We have lots of good schools like Peyton, but most of our schools are failing. And so at that point,
that sounds like an F.
I would say No, no. At that point, I would give them a D.
So if I can do my math right, it looks like a D plus or a C minus.
C minus.
Okay.
We're
Gary
doing
Lapp,
well with early childhood education, too.
former school board president, you get to give the last grade and also what the biggest challenge is.
I'd give the schools a C minus because of the unevenness that we have throughout our city of performance. I'd like an A for every school. That would be my goal. The biggest challenge to bringing about that excellence throughout our city is leadership. Starts with the mayor. The mayor has to show the leadership here to make sure that there's an excellent team recruited to lead the school system. That team has to employ focus like it has not before, has to recruit excellent teachers unlike it has over the recent past, and has to develop the dollars to bring about the excellence that we seek. It's got to be, we have to bring down our class size. I would, as I said again, I don't want to be a broken record. I'd like to lengthen our school day, lengthen our school year. If we put these ingredients together, Andy, we will see improvement throughout the city in our Chicago public schools. It is achievable. We've done it before. We can do it again. We've just lost it over the last 9 years.
The most famous educator in America right now is probably a woman named Michelle Rhee, who ran the schools in Washington, D.C., and she ran them so aggressively and so controversially that she takes actually the blame for the defeat of the mayor of Washington, who lost recently, Adrian Fenty. And when he lost, she resigned. And she has started a group called Students First because she believes, as she wrote in Newsweek in the past issue, that it is truly time for someone to stand up and head a group that does, in fact, put students first instead of boards of education that may put bureaucracies first, or teachers' unions that obviously put the well-being of teachers first. Would there be a role for a Michelle Rhee in Chicago under your administration? And I'm not saying that you necessarily recruit her to be superintendent, although maybe you would, but can you use somebody like that, or is she too far off in one direction to be of any value in a school system? And with this question, we begin with Senator Meeks.
Michelle Rhee, as a consultant, her expertise could always be used. The value add of a person like that is the statement, students first. Students first, not legislators first. Students first, not unions first. Students first, not bureaucracy first. So I think that the basic theme of what she has set forth has to be the model that all of us follow. This is about the students. That's what schools are about. Schools are not about the administration or the politician or making the next person in office look good. Schools are about the students. And if we would put the students first, and if the students were our first priority, then I am convinced that some of the problems that we're facing, we might not be facing.
Gary Chico, would there be a role for a Michelle Rhee in helping improve the situation here?
Well, let me say this. I mean, as a mayor, I would probably rise or fall on the productivity of our schools, and I'm willing to do that. So that means we bring in whoever's necessary to bring about the turnaround of the schools the way we've described today, to make sure that no community is left behind from an excellent education option. Whether or not she is the right person or not, I don't know. I'll tell you this. I didn't like the way that community in Washington, D.C. seemed to be torn apart every time I took a look at it. I like the idea of somebody like a Paul Vallis, somebody like this, who has a great administrative head, appreciates education, and knows how to get things done. You hold those people accountable, and I think you'll see the results that you're looking for.
Carol Mosley-Braun?
Without personalizing it, I really think that what we need is an educator, and I think we need a homegrown one. We've got enough talent in our school system to find the people who are capable of reforming the system, cleaning out the bureaucracy, putting the children first, and getting our neighborhood schools back in the kind of shape they were when I came along. I think that is our big challenge. How do we make the neighborhood schools work so that every child in every neighborhood has an opportunity to access a quality public education? That's the issue here. Again, I said there's a continuum, and there is. And a lot of this battle is around how we define ourselves as a community. If we are going to put ourselves in a situation where it's a pitted battle, or pitched battle, as you say, between one set of interests and another set of interests, we're all going to lose. We have to come together as parents, as communities, as teachers, administrators, in behalf of providing a educated workforce, the workforce that's going to be the community of the future. This is our obligation to them, and it's our obligation to ourselves.
Miguel Del Valle, the Michelle Rhee question.
I think Michelle Rhee should have stayed in her position. I think she should have fought. I think if she really believes that her way is the right way, I think she should have tried hard to get the new mayor and the administration to cooperate with her. I think there are a lot of talented individuals here in the state of Illinois, in the city of Chicago, and while it plays well with the media to say that we're going to conduct a national search and that we're going to look everywhere, you know, this is a big state. And if we can't find a good, solid leader for our schools right here, then our problems are a lot bigger than who the next superintendent is going to be.
We have time for 2 more questions before the closing statements, and I want to ask you one that's a yes/no question. I don't think we need a lot of elaboration because it's not too dissimilar from the question I just asked, and that is, would you consider bringing Paul Vallis back to run the Chicago Public Schools? On that one, Senator Meeks.
Absolutely not. He's not an educator.
Okay. Miguel Del Valle?
Well, I know Paul Vallis. I knew him before he came to the Chicago Public Schools and worked with Gary Chico. He's a great guy, but Paul Vallis did a whole lot of pilot programs that went nowhere in the Chicago Public School system. He's a good guy, but he's not one that I would want coming back.
Gary, he did come back to endorse you for mayor. You were a team for all those years. Would you consider bringing him back?
Yes, and I'll do it based on the results that he achieved over 6 years. I'll let the record speak for itself.
Carol Mosley Braun, the Vallis question.
Nope.
I've known you a lot of years. That may be the only time I've ever gotten a one-word answer. That's fantastic. Okay, so last but not least, before your closing statements, the mayor's single biggest challenge in dealing with the school system is to appoint school board members and then decide who a Board of Education president is. And I just want to ask you in sort of general terms, how do you put a board together that's going to steer that ship with an administration and get on the page that does what you need it to do? I'm not criticizing the current board, but if a system gets a D, then its Board of Education hasn't been leading properly, at least from a governance standpoint. So what do you do to put a board together that can really move this ship forward policy-wise? And first on that one is Senator Meeks.
The question is, has the board been allowed to lead? That's the first question. And you put a board together by finding competent people who understand education and administration, and hopefully persons who've worked in the field of education. You don't get a bunch of outsiders and just say, hey, come and run our school system. And so just as the superintendent must have some idea of how education works, so does the board members.
So would the board president have to be an educator?
The board president would not have to be an educator.
Okay. Next in this one is Miguel Del Valle. How do you put a good board together?
Well, first of all, I think we need to expand the board. It was reduced in size for the reason that it was easier to control. We need 7 to 9 board members, and I would also, as mayor, establish a nominating committee made up of a teacher, a civic leader, business leader, parents, who would then give me 3 names. They would do the screening, give me 3 names to pick from to fill vacancies and slots on the board. I think there has to be a connection with the communities and the school system. I don't think that the mayor should by himself appoint every board member without consultation and without advice and counsel from others.
So you would reconstitute an old governance system that used to exist in the city called the School Board Nominating Commission.
I
You
would
bring it back?
establish, yes, I would.
Okay. Carol, are you okay? You were coughing. Are you good?
Thank you.
Okay.
I've got terrible.
What would you do? How do you put a good board together?
You know, what you do is you try to find the most competent people you can in the variety of disciplines that the board will have to engage, with which the board will have to engage. And that includes people with financial background, people who are educators, people who understand intergovernmental relations, people from the business community, citizens, parents. You know, you want to have all stakeholders represented on a board of education, and work collaboratively with the city council. Have we forgotten about them? I mean, the city council should have a role in helping to shape the new board and the nominating process as well. And so that would be what I would do as mayor, to reconstitute the Board of Education.
Gary, you served on it. What would you do to put a good one together?
Well, I was privileged to serve on the Board of Education, and I really relished my role as a parent on the Board of Education because I think that gave me a special insight. In 1995, I had the privilege again, Andy, to assemble the first Board of Education when the legislature declared our schools in crisis. And we turned to a very small group of people that had nothing but the interest of the children in mind. Norm Bobbins, Avis Lavelle, Dr. Tariq Butt, myself, and it was Sharon Gilliam. And I think that group of people went to work, dealt with the crisis, and did an admirable job. The only thing I would say about nominating commissions, I'm not outright against it, but I did see a lot of gridlock take place when the nominating commission was working, and I think we have to move quickly and responsibly to put the best people we can find with city council approval. Remember, the city council does have a role. They approve all these folks to be sitting as board members for the Board of Education.
Okay, so let each of these distinguished individuals have the last word and give you their final thoughts. They each get a minute now, and I didn't give anyone a chance during the course of this to basically challenge something someone else said, because it seemed to me that the answers had such a civilized and sensible quality, even if you didn't always agree, that this never had to get contentious. But you get the last word now in any direction you want to take. Senator Meeks, you're first.
Let me simply say thank you to everybody who sat patiently and listened to our answers. I hope you were able to glean from them. Let me thank the other candidates who are on the panel. And let me say that I was really moved by everybody's opening statement. Everybody up here, we went to Chicago Public Schools. So that means that there was a day that Chicago Public Schools used to work. Something happened along the way, and we have to fix it. We have to fix it by making sure that every student can read before they get out of the 3rd grade. We have to fix it by making sure that we're not just socially promoting students along who cannot do the work. We have to fix it by giving parents a choice until we have fixed it.
This may be the last words you can get out. Carol?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to thank everybody here for coming out tonight to have this conversation. Admittedly, it was on the surface of many very deep and thorny issues, but the fact that you're here says that you care about education and the future of our city enough to give of your time this evening. And that's the first, and I believe the most important step. Education reflects who we are as a community, probably more than any other indicia of city life, of urban living. And how we approach our schools is a reflection of how we see ourselves. I hope that we will come away from these conversations committed to the old idea that public education is a public good, and it serves the interests of everyone in the city of Chicago and in our country. It is as critical and central an issue of our national defense as any military system, because if we don't educate our children for this century, they will not be able to compete in a global economic competition, and we will put our country on a slippery slope to decline. I personally am not prepared to stand by and watch that happen. I believe I have an obligation, and I believe you have the same sense of obligation to our public school system. Thank you.
Miguel Del Valle, your final thoughts?
You know, during this campaign, there'll be a lot of discussion about public safety, unemployment, underemployment, economic development in the city, and everything, all of those things revolve around what we do with our public education system, how we prepare our young people, and what opportunities do we provide those who have left school. How do we retrieve the students who dropped out at the age of 17 that are now hanging around the streets, unemployed, and then dealing in the underground economy and doing other kinds of things that end up getting them into big trouble and costing us a lot of money as a society. The fact of the matter is that education is a challenge nationally. We are falling behind other countries, even developing countries. And so it's an issue that we must tackle at the federal, state, and local levels. I am not going to indict every single school in the city of Chicago. There are wonderful things going on at many schools. We just have to concentrate and focus on our neighborhood schools where there is the greatest need.
And the last words of the forum portion, Gary Chico.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, first of all, to Walter Payton, its fine students, and to the sponsoring organizations this evening for affording us this forum to talk about this very important topic. 3 generations of the Chico family have been educated in Chicago public schools, and I believe, and I'm very, very committed to our public education system. However, as you've heard this evening, I believe we've lost our way, and it's time to get it back. The principle that should guide us is providing every child in every part of our city an excellent education. I've proposed a plan. It's ambitious. Some have accused me of being pie in the sky. Can you imagine? If we're going to stretch and reach any place, this is the place to aspire and be everything that we could possibly be. This is the time for big ideas. This is the time for big action, because if we don't shoot high, we won't land there. And I want to make sure that as a city, the most important thing that we can do is educate our children, because it is the bedrock of who we are and who we will become. So it's been a pleasure to be with you, and I really enjoyed the ability to debate tonight. Thank you.
Before I introduce Colin Hitt from the Illinois Policy Institute, one of the sponsors tonight, let me just tell you that as a lifelong Chicagoan who spent almost 40 years in the news business and now almost 2 years running the Better Government Association, it's really thrilling to see a race for mayor in Chicago that is vibrant and brings a group of candidates out to neighborhoods to talk to real people, sit side by side, put up with whatever the questions are, and try to enlighten and elucidate and inform you about the issues. This is a thrilling moment for the city of Chicago. This is democracy at its absolute best. And for whatever reason, the last 20 years have simply been a series of fairly non-competitive races. So I think you should all relish the moment, hold all of these candidates to the highest standards, demand that they come out and meet you face to face in unscripted settings and answer your questions and put up with whatever the nonsensical questions people like me may ask, so that you can actually take a measure of them, so you can see them side by side and you can figure out who you want to have lead the city. So on that note, all I would say is I said that better government is a right and a responsibility. Better schools are a right and a responsibility. And if one of these people leads diligently and wisely, and we all hold them accountable, it can actually become a reality. The challenge is daunting, as is the challenge of making better government, which is my day job. But it's also something we can accomplish if we work together. I urge all of you to consider joining the Better Government Association to help me hold folks like these accountable, and others in other branches of government. But more importantly, pay attention to the mayor's race. Listen to the candidates in forums like this and not just in TV commercials, and pick somebody who can really lead us, because this is a brand new day for Chicago. Thanks for coming out tonight. Colin Hitt will have the last word.
Well, as Andy said, my name is Colin Hitt, and I'm with the Illinois Policy Institute, your last co-sponsor this evening. For those of you who don't know, the Illinois Policy Institute is a public policy think tank that, among other things, is heavily engaged and committed to education reform in Chicago and across the state. And it's been my honor for 5 years next month to help build out those efforts with the Institute. Few mayors in America have the authority to shape their schools like the authority that the mayor of Chicago has. The next 4 years are going to be crucial to this city's schools and to the city as a whole. I want to thank each of you for your courage to come here this evening and the dignity with which you've approached this important and often emotional issue. On behalf of the Illinois Policy Institute, the Illinois Raise Your Hand Coalition, and the Northside Democracy for America, I want to thank all of you in the audience tonight for being here on this winter evening and to invite you to a reception in the atrium just outside. There will be a meet and greet at which the candidates are welcome to attend and discuss these issues in further depth, and each of us will be there as well, your co-sponsors. Please join me in one last round of applause for our moderator this evening, Andy Shaw. Everybody, please get home safely tonight and have a happy holiday.